Across the world lie the ruins of civilizations that once thrived, yet vanished without a trace. Their monuments still rise from the earth, pyramids swallowed by jungle, cities carved into stone, towers lost to time. Each is a mystery, a question left unanswered by history. In this journey, we will uncover the stories of great peoples who disappeared, leaving behind only fragments and silence. From the Maya to Great Zimbabwe, from Petra to forgotten empires hidden in the sands, these are the lost worlds of the ancient past. These videos take countless hours to research, write, and create. If you enjoy exploring these mysteries and want to see more, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel. Your support means everything. It's what allows me to keep bringing these hidden histories back to life. Now, let us begin.
In the northwestern lands of the Indian subcontinent, along the fertile plains of the Indus River, once thrived one of humanity's earliest and most sophisticated civilizations. The Indus Valley Civilization, also called the Harappan Civilization, flourished more than 4,000 years ago, during the same period as the great kingdoms of Egypt and Mesopotamia. Yet unlike those cultures, whose gods, kings, and wars are recorded in writing, the story of the Indus remains shrouded in silence. The ruins of their cities, Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Dholavira, reveal a world startlingly advanced. Wide streets laid out in precise grids, houses equipped with private baths, and complex drainage systems that carried waste away with remarkable efficiency. It was urban planning on a scale far ahead of its time, unmatched in other parts of the world for centuries to come. Archaeologists marvel at their skill, yet the mystery deepens. For the people who built these cities left behind no deciphered records. Their script, etched on seals and tablets, remains undeciphered. We do not know their names, their rulers, their gods, or their stories. Mohenjo-daro, the Mound of the Dead, rises from the dust of Pakistan's Sindh province as one of the most enigmatic cities of antiquity. Here, massive brick platforms, granaries, and public baths suggest a society both organized and communal. Unlike the pharaohs of Egypt or the kings of Mesopotamia, no grand palaces or monumental tombs have been discovered. This absence has led some scholars to suggest the Indus was ruled not by kings, but by councils, perhaps a more egalitarian society, one without singular rulers elevated above the rest. Others argue that the rulers may have existed, but their symbols of power have yet to be uncovered. The famous Great Bath of Mohenjo-daro is perhaps the most evocative of all discoveries. A vast pool lined with brick, with steps descending into its depths. Was it used for ritual purification, for civic gatherings? Its true purpose is unknown, but the structure suggests water held deep symbolic significance in Indus life. The Indus were not isolated. Archaeological evidence shows they traded widely with Mesopotamia, with distant lands, and with neighboring cultures. Their seals, carved with animal motifs and undeciphered symbols, have been found in Mesopotamian cities, suggesting merchants carried goods across vast distances. The civilization thrived on agriculture, its fields watered by the seasonal floods of the Indus, producing surpluses that fed its growing cities. And then, suddenly, it ended. Around 1900 BCE, the Indus Valley Civilization began to decline. By 1700 BCE, its great cities lay abandoned. But why? Theories abound, each offering only fragments of the truth. Some suggest climate change played a role, that the rivers which sustained their fields shifted course or dried up, turning fertile plains into barren land. Others point to floods that may have devastated their cities. There is evidence of tectonic activity, earthquakes that could have altered the very landscape they depended upon. Another theory suggests waves of migration or invasion disrupted the Indus world. The arrival of Indo-Aryan-speaking peoples into the subcontinent has long been tied to the collapse, though modern scholarship complicates this picture. Some believe that rather than a violent conquest, the decline may have been a slow process of societal fragmentation, external pressures combining with internal weaknesses. Archaeologists have found signs of abandonment, streets left empty, construction ceasing, cities slowly deteriorating. Unlike the fiery destruction layers found in other ancient ruins, there is little evidence of widespread war. Instead, the decline seems quieter, more gradual, like a candle slowly extinguished rather than suddenly blown out. What makes the Indus Valley civilization so haunting is not just its disappearance, but the silence it left behind. Without a deciphered script, we cannot hear their voices. Their myths, their poetry, their laws, their prayers, all are locked away beyond our reach. Their gods are nameless, their rulers faceless. We see only the skeleton of their achievements, stripped of identity. The people of the Indus were not primitive. They mastered urban engineering, trade, and craft. They produced exquisite jewelry, standardized weights, and intricate seals. They lived in a society where thousands thrived together in order, without evidence of vast inequality or constant warfare. Yet today, we cannot even call them by their own name. Harappan civilization is a label of modern invention, drawn from one of their ruins. Whatever they called themselves is lost forever. Imagine standing atop the ruins of Mohenjo-daro at dusk. The sun sinks over the Indus plain, shadows stretch across the weathered bricks, and a dry wind whistles through the silence. Once, these streets were alive with voices, with children, merchants, priests, and families. Fires burned in hearths, songs may have echoed in courtyards, and rituals were performed in sacred spaces. Now all is gone. The people have vanished, leaving behind only stone and silence. The Indus Valley civilization is a mirror held up to our own world, a society brilliant, complex, and thriving, yet vulnerable to forces beyond its control. We marvel at their achievements, but their fate is a warning. Civilizations can rise to astonishing heights, but no matter how advanced, they too can fall into oblivion. Today, their undeciphered script sits in museums, rows of symbols etched into clay and stone, waiting for someone to unlock their meaning. Perhaps one day the lost voices of the Indus will speak again. Until then, their civilization remains a riddle, a lost world that flourished, thrived, and vanished without a trace.
Long before the rise of the Maya, centuries before the great cities of the Aztec Empire, another mysterious people flourished in the jungles and swamps of ancient Mesoamerica. They are known today as the Olmecs, often called the mother culture of the Americas. Between 1500 and 400 BCE, they built ceremonial centers, developed complex religious traditions, and influenced the civilizations that would follow. Yet despite their monumental achievements, the Olmecs themselves vanished, leaving behind only fragments of their world, enigmatic ruins, intricate carvings, and colossal stone heads that still gaze out across the centuries. The heart of the Olmec world lay in the lowlands of modern-day Veracruz and Tabasco, regions of dense forests, winding rivers, and coastal swamps. Here, at sites like San Lorenzo, La Venta, and Tres Zapotes, the Olmecs raised ceremonial complexes that blended earth and stone. They were not builders of massive stone pyramids like the Maya or Aztec. Instead, their architecture relied heavily on earthen mounds and platforms, some rising dozens of feet above the landscape.
From these sacred centers, their priests and rulers directed the rhythms of Olmec life. But it is not their architecture that captures the imagination most. It is their art. The Olmecs were master sculptors, working jade, basalt, and clay with incredible skill. Their most iconic creations are the colossal stone heads, some weighing more than 20 tons, carved from single blocks of volcanic rock. These massive sculptures, with their flattened noses, full lips, and distinctive helmets, are thought to represent rulers or warriors. Each head has unique features, suggesting portraits of individuals rather than generic faces. They are expressions of power, guardians of memory, and yet no one knows their names, their lives, or the stories behind their creation. Smaller artifacts reveal even deeper mysteries. Jade figurines depicting human jaguar hybrids hint at a powerful religious or mythological system. Scholars call it the were-jaguar motif, though its meaning is debated. Was the jaguar a god? A totem of rulership? A symbol of transformation? The Olmecs left no deciphered writing to explain. Some believe their glyph-like symbols found on artifacts may represent the earliest writing in the Americas, but the evidence is fragmentary. If they had a script, it has not survived. Religion permeated Olmec life. Archaeological evidence points to ritual bloodletting, sacred ball games, and shamanic practices. Some suggest the Olmecs developed a calendar and even early forms of astronomy, precursors to the sophisticated systems later perfected by the Maya. Their art often depicts rulers or shamans in trances, perhaps communicating with gods or ancestors. It is clear the Olmecs viewed the world as alive with spiritual power, where rulers mediated between the human and divine realms. The Olmecs were not an isolated people. Trade routes stretched outward from their heartland, carrying obsidian, jade, serpentine, and cacao. They influenced distant cultures, spreading artistic styles and religious motifs across Mesoamerica. The ball game, played with rubber balls on stone courts, first appears in Olmec culture and would endure as a sacred ritual for millennia. The very foundations of Mesoamerican civilization, sacred kingship, ceremonial centers, complex art, cosmology, were laid by the Olmecs. And then, around 400 BCE, their world unraveled. San Lorenzo, their earliest great center, had already declined centuries earlier, its monuments deliberately defaced and buried. La Venta, which succeeded it, eventually fell into ruin as well. Tres Zapotes lingered, but by the 1st centuries BCE, the distinct Olmec culture had vanished. The reasons remain unclear. Some archaeologists point to environmental change. The swampy lowlands where they lived were vulnerable to shifts in river patterns, floods, or droughts. Others suggest social upheaval, perhaps rivalries among elites, or conflict between centers. There is evidence that monuments were intentionally destroyed, heads toppled, altars broken, as though rebellion or ritual closure marked the end of their ceremonial sites. Yet just as suddenly as they rose, the Olmecs disappeared. Unlike the Maya, who left inscriptions and codices, or the Aztec remembered in chronicles, the Olmecs left no written histories. Their language, if recorded, is lost. We cannot hear their voices or read their prayers. All that remains are their artifacts: stone, jade, clay, fragments of a culture we can glimpse, but not fully know. What is most haunting about the Olmecs is their legacy. Though their civilization disappeared, echoes of their influence resound across the ancient Americas. The Maya inherited and expanded upon Olmec cosmology, mathematics, and possibly writing.
Later peoples of central Mexico carried forward their sacred ball game, their rituals, and their art styles. The Olmecs vanished, yet their shadows shaped the civilizations that followed. Standing before one of their colossal heads today is a powerful experience. The sheer scale, the weight of stone, the expression carved into features that are both human and monumental. It's as if the Olmecs are still present, watching across the millennia. These silent guardians remind us that behind the vanished culture were real people, rulers, shamans, artisans, farmers, a society that lived, dreamed, and believed their world would endure. And yet they too became a mystery. Their names forgotten, their myths erased, their language silenced. Only stone remembers them now. The Olmecs are a civilization both foundational and elusive. They gave birth to ideas that would flourish across Mesoamerica, yet their own story was cut short. In their disappearance, they joined the long list of cultures that rose, thrived, and fell into oblivion. Their colossal heads stand not just as monuments, but as questions carved in stone. Who were you? What did you believe? Why did you vanish? We may never have the answers, but their silence speaks as loudly as their art. The Olmecs remind us that civilizations can shape the world and yet themselves fade into shadows. A mother culture that gave birth to greatness and then disappeared without a trace.
In the heart of North America, long before the first Europeans set foot on the continent, there rose a city that rivaled some of the great urban centers of the world. Its name was Cahokia, though that label comes from later tribes and settlers. The people who built it left no written record to tell us what they called themselves or the sprawling metropolis they raised on the floodplains of the Mississippi River. For centuries, their city flourished. Then, almost as suddenly as it appeared, it was abandoned, leaving behind towering earthen mounds and a mystery that still unsettles archaeologists today. Cahokia reached its zenith between 1050 and 1200 CE. At its height, the city sprawled across 6 square miles, making it larger than many contemporary European cities. Estimates suggest its population may have exceeded 20,000, perhaps even 40,000, more than London at the time. Yet Cahokia was not built of stone like Rome or Angkor, but of earth. Its people constructed massive ceremonial mounds by moving soil basket by basket, piling millions of tons to create platforms, pyramids, and flat-topped structures that still dominate the landscape today. The largest of these, Monk's Mound, rises 10 stories high and covers more ground than the Great Pyramid of Giza. Standing atop it, one could survey the vast city, broad plazas, wooden palisades, clusters of homes, and hundreds of smaller mounds stretching toward the horizon. To the people of Cahokia, these mounds were more than architecture. They were sacred places, centers of ritual and power, aligning with the cycles of the sun and stars. One of the most striking discoveries at Cahokia is known as Woodhenge, a series of enormous timber circles carefully arranged to mark solstices and equinoxes. This was a calendar, a cosmic clock by which the people regulated ceremonies, agriculture, and perhaps their very understanding of the universe. It reveals a society deeply attuned to the rhythms of the natural world, guided as much by the heavens as by earthly needs. But Cahokia was not merely ceremonial, it was a city of commerce, drawing goods from far and wide. Obsidian from the Rocky Mountains, copper from the Great Lakes, shells from the Gulf of Mexico, all have been uncovered in its remains. This trade network stretched for thousands of miles, suggesting that Cahokia was the beating heart of a vast exchange system across the pre-Columbian Americas. Yet beneath the surface of prosperity, shadows linger. Archaeological evidence points to social stratification.
elites who ruled from atop their mounds while commoners labored below. Excavations have uncovered signs of ritual human sacrifice, including mass graves where dozens of young women were buried together, their lives likely offered in ceremonies to sustain the city's spiritual balance. Cahokia was a place of brilliance, but also of blood. Then, in the 13th century, decline began. The reasons remain uncertain. Some scholars suggest overpopulation strained the land. The fertile soils of the Mississippi floodplain may have been exhausted by intensive farming of maize, the city's lifeblood. Others point to climate change. A cooling period known as the Little Ice Age disrupted growing seasons, bringing famine. There is evidence of social unrest, defensive palisades, even violent conflict. Disease, flooding, or political collapse could also have played their part. By the time Europeans reached the region in the 16th century, Cahokia was already a memory, its mounds abandoned to the grasses. No chronicles remain from the builders themselves. Their myths, their rulers, their reasons for leaving, all have been lost to time. What endures are the mounds, silent witnesses to a civilization that rose in the heart of a continent, then disappeared. The story of Cahokia forces us to reconsider what we think we know about ancient North America. Too often, the land is imagined as empty, waiting for settlers, but Cahokia proves otherwise. Here was a city as complex, as ambitious, as spiritually profound as any in the Old World. Its ruins whisper of achievements as grand as Rome, as enigmatic as the Maya, and as tragic as Atlantis. Though this was no myth, but a city of flesh and earth, of ritual and sacrifice, whose people walked the same ground we do today. Standing before Monk's Mount, it is impossible not to feel the weight of what has been lost. The echoes of chants that once rose into the night air, the flicker of firelight across wooden palisades, the steady rhythm of footsteps carrying baskets of soil to raise the mounds higher and higher. All of it gone, leaving only earthworks that puzzle and haunt us. Why did Cahokia vanish? Perhaps the answer lies in the fragility of human ambition. Even the greatest societies can falter under the weight of their own success. Perhaps it was the earth itself, rivers shifting, climates cooling, harvests failing, that brought this city to its knees. Or perhaps the true reasons lie buried beneath centuries of silence, never to be uncovered. Cahokia reminds us that the greatest civilizations are not always carved in stone. Sometimes they are built from earth and memory. And like all things, they can vanish without a trace.
In the rugged hills and plains of ancient Anatolia, a civilization rose that would rival Egypt and Babylon in power, diplomacy, and warfare. The Hittites were masters of chariots, architects of law, and negotiators of empires. Their kingdom, centered around Hattusa in modern-day Turkey, flourished during the 2nd millennium BCE, controlling vast stretches of land and commanding the loyalty of vassal states. And yet, within a few generations, this formidable empire vanished almost without a trace, leaving only stone ruins, fragmented tablets, and mysteries that continue to puzzle scholars. The Hittites first emerge in the historical record around 1700 BCE, but their roots stretch further back into Anatolia's Bronze Age. By the 15th century BCE, they had built a powerful state, expanding through military conquest and political alliances. Hattusa, their capital, became a city of immense complexity. Fortified walls stretching miles, monumental gates adorned with lions and sphinxes, and temples dedicated to a pantheon of gods that reflected both Hittite and conquered peoples' beliefs. Streets were carefully planned, water systems engineered, and inscriptions etched into stone to commemorate rulers and divine favor. War was central to Hittite power. They perfected the use of chariots and iron weapons, gaining a reputation for military innovation that spread fear and respect across the Near East. Their armies marched from Anatolia into Syria, challenging Egypt, Mitanni, and Mesopotamian powers. The Battle of Kadesh, fought against Pharaoh Ramses II of Egypt around 1274 BCE, stands as one of the most famous clashes of the ancient world. While neither side secured decisive victory, it cemented the Hittites' reputation as equals to the mighty Egyptians. Yet the Hittites were more than warriors. They were also diplomats and administrators. Cuneiform tablets discovered at Hattusa revealed treaties, trade agreements, and correspondence with kings across the region. Their legal codes were advanced, addressing crime, property rights, and social obligations with a sophistication rivaling Babylonian law. Religion, too, was deeply intertwined with governance. Kings often acted as mediators between the gods and the people, performing rituals to secure divine favor for war, harvests, and the stability of the state. Hattusa itself reflects the Hittites' ambition and engineering skill. Massive stone walls, some over 20 feet thick, protected the city from invaders. Gates like the Lion Gate and the Sphinx Gate were more than defensive structures, they were symbols of power, carved with mythical beasts to awe and intimidate. Inside, grand temples rose alongside palaces, workshops, and storerooms, revealing a society capable of organizing labor and resources on a scale unmatched in its region. Then, suddenly, the empire collapsed. Around 1200 BCE, during the wider phenomenon known as the Bronze Age collapse, Hittite cities were abandoned or destroyed. Hattusa itself was burned and deserted, its walls left to crumble under centuries of wind and rain. The reasons remain debated. Invasions by the mysterious sea peoples may have destabilized the region. Climate change, famine, and drought could have undermined agriculture. Internal rebellion or dynastic struggles might have fractured political authority. Whatever the cause, the Hittites disappeared as a dominant force, leaving Anatolia fragmented into smaller kingdoms. The Hittites' written records survived, but only partially. Thousands of clay tablets inscribed in Hittite cuneiform and Akkadian have been unearthed in Hattusa. They reveal glimpses of diplomacy, law, religion, and daily life. Yet much remains incomprehensible. The language itself vanished, leaving scholars to reconstruct its structure and vocabulary painstakingly. Many of the Hittites' achievements, their metallurgy, military innovations, and administrative techniques influenced neighboring civilizations, but the people themselves faded into obscurity. What makes the Hittites haunting is the contrast between their former power and their sudden disappearance. They were builders of empires, negotiators of peace and war, and innovators in law and administration. Yet within a few generations, their cities fell silent, their language ceased to be spoken, and the names of their kings were forgotten. Today, Hattusa lies in ruins, its lion-carved gates and monumental walls standing as silent witnesses to a vanished civilization. The Hittites remind us that even the greatest empires are fragile. Stone and clay can endure, but power, culture, and memory are vulnerable to the sweep of time, conflict, and environmental change. Their rise and fall offer a cautionary tale. Civilizations can achieve greatness and influence generations, yet vanish almost completely as they appeared. Visiting the remnants of Hattusa today is an encounter with absence. The streets are empty, the palace is roofless, the temples reduced to rubble. But through archaeology, cuneiform tablets, and careful study, we glimpse the world of a people who once shaped history. A civilization that conquered, built, and ruled, and then disappeared into the shadows, leaving only the faint echoes of its grandeur. In the story of the Hittites, we see a pattern repeated across time. Human ingenuity, ambition, and culture can create marvels that endure, yet even the mightiest empires can vanish without warning, leaving behind puzzles that defy full understanding. The Hittites were once masters of Anatolia, and yet, like so many lost civilizations, they now exist only in the ruins they left behind and the questions that haunt our search for answers.
In the far southwest of the Iberian Peninsula, where the rivers meet the Atlantic and the Mediterranean currents sweep the shores, there once flourished a civilization both wealthy and enigmatic. The Greeks spoke of it in hushed tones, the Phoenicians sailed there for trade, and the Romans later searched for its remnants. This place was Tartessos, a Bronze Age culture that rose to prominence, thrived on metal wealth, and then slipped without explanation into the void of history. Some called it a kingdom of kings and treasures, others a lost Atlantis of the West. But whatever Tartessos truly was, it left behind traces that suggest both extraordinary prosperity and an enduring mystery. Tartessos first emerges in written records around the first millennium BCE, mentioned by Greek historians and poets. Herodotus, the father of history, tells us of a king named Arganthonius, who ruled for 80 years and welcomed Greek traders into his realm. According to the stories, he was so wealthy in silver and gold that he gifted vast sums to the Greeks to build defensive walls in their homeland. This vision of Tartessos as a land of unimaginable riches is reinforced by archaeology. The Iberian Peninsula was rich in mineral resources, especially silver, copper, and tin, which were in high demand throughout the Mediterranean world. Control over these resources gave Tartessos both wealth and power, making it a hub of trade and cultural exchange. At the heart of Tartessian culture lay the Guadalquivir River, whose fertile valleys supported settlements and whose waters provided access to the sea. Here, archaeology has uncovered traces of an advanced society, fine metalwork, decorated ceramics, and evidence of urban planning. The Tartessians were influenced by their contacts with the Phoenicians, who had established colonies along the coast. Through this connection, they absorbed writing systems, religious practices, and artistic styles. Indeed, inscriptions in the still partly undeciphered Tartessian script hint at a literate society, one engaged in recording its own stories, laws, or rituals. Yet the meaning of those inscriptions remains locked away, one more piece of the puzzle that keeps Tartessos shrouded in mystery. The Tartessians were not only rich in metals, but also in myth. To the Greeks, this distant land at the edge of the known world was associated with legends. Some later writers even linked Tartessos to Atlantis, the fabled island described by Plato. While this is almost certainly myth, it reflects the aura that surrounded Tartessos in the ancient imagination. It was seen as a land beyond the Pillars of Hercules, a frontier where the known world met the unknown, a place of both wealth and wonder. But as quickly as Tartessos appeared in the historical record, it vanished. By the 5th century BCE, the Greeks no longer spoke of Tartessos, and its memory faded into silence. Archaeological evidence suggests that around this time, many Tartessian centers were abandoned or destroyed. Why? The reasons remain elusive. Some scholars point to political upheaval, as rival powers like Carthage sought to dominate Iberian trade. Others suggest environmental factors, such as shifts in river courses or soil exhaustion that undermined the economic base of the region. Still others argue that Tartessos may have been absorbed into emerging Iberian cultures, its distinct identity dissolving rather than collapsing violently. One of the most tantalizing aspects of Tartessos is how little we truly know. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, it left no great archives of texts, no monumental inscriptions that tell us its story in its own words. Its script, though preserved on artifacts, remains only partially understood. Its capital city, if it had one, has never been definitively identified. Some believe it lay near modern Seville or Huelva, buried beneath layers of later settlements. Others propose sites closer to the coast, now hidden beneath the shifting sands or drowned by the sea. The silence of Tartessos is as much an absence as it is a presence, an empire remembered by others but lost to itself. The archaeological finds that do survive, however, reveal glimpses of sophistication. Magnificent treasures such as the Carambolo hoard, unearthed near Seville in the 20th century, display exquisite gold craftsmanship,
necklaces, pectorals, and diadems that speak of royal courts and ceremonial splendor. Other finds include richly decorated ceramics, bronze artifacts, and sacred enclosures that hint at complex religious life. Together, they suggest a people who were not only traders and metalworkers, but also creators of a distinct cultural identity, blending indigenous Iberian traditions with influences from the wider Mediterranean world. The disappearance of Tartessos raises unsettling questions. How does a civilization so prominent, so wealthy, simply vanish? Did it collapse in a single catastrophic moment, or was it gradually absorbed into the mosaic of Iberian tribes, its name forgotten, but its legacy carried on in new forms? Was it erased by foreign domination, natural disaster, or the slow erosion of its economic lifelines? Each theory carries weight, yet none provides a definitive answer. What remains is the enduring mystery of a people who left behind riches, but not voices, ruins, but not chronicles. Today, Tartessos occupies a peculiar space in our imagination. It is both historical and mythical, real and elusive. The Greeks and Phoenicians knew it well enough to trade with it, yet we can't even say for certain where its capital once stood. Its kings may have ruled over domains rich in silver and gold, yet their names, save for the legendary Arganthonius, are lost. It is a civilization defined as much by absence as by presence, by what we do not know as by what we do. And perhaps that is why it captivates us still. In Tartessos, we see not only the wealth of the ancient world, but also the fragility of memory, how easily even a thriving culture can be swallowed by time. As we sift through the golden treasures and cryptic inscriptions of Tartessos, we are reminded of the many civilizations that lie just beyond our reach, once vibrant, now silent, their voices muffled by centuries of forgetting. And in the silence of Tartessos, we hear an echo of the eternal question: how much of our own world, too, will someday be lost to history's shadows?
In the rugged deserts of southern Jordan, carved into rose-red cliffs, lies one of the most breathtaking archaeological wonders of the ancient world, Petra. Known to the ancients as the Rock, this hidden city was the heart of the Nabatean kingdom, a people who turned barren landscapes into thriving centers of trade and power. Their mastery of stone-cut architecture and water engineering allowed them to build an oasis where none should exist. For centuries, Petra flourished, dazzling visitors with its temples, tombs, and markets. And then, as with so many other great civilizations, it slipped away, leaving behind silence and ruins carved in stone. The Nabateans were originally nomadic tribes who roamed the deserts of Arabia. By the 4th century BCE, they had settled in the area around Petra, strategically located at the crossroads of vital trade routes. These routes connected the Arabian Peninsula with the Mediterranean, carrying precious commodities such as frankincense, myrrh, and spices. The Nabateans grew wealthy by controlling and taxing this trade, and with their riches, they transformed Petra into a dazzling urban center. The city itself was unlike any other. Instead of building upward or outward, the Nabateans carved directly into the sandstone cliffs, creating monumental facades that still leave modern visitors in awe. The most famous of these is Al-Khazne, the treasury, with its elaborate Hellenistic-style columns, statues, and carvings. It looms at the end of a narrow gorge known as the Siq, as if to surprise and overwhelm all who enter. Yet Al-Khazne was only one of hundreds of structures. Tombs, temples, amphitheaters, and homes were all hewn from the living rock. Each facade speaks of a people who blended influences from Greece, Rome, Egypt, and Mesopotamia into a unique cultural identity. The genius of the Nabateans extended beyond architecture. Petra sits in a region of arid deserts and rocky mountains, where rainfall is scarce and unpredictable. Yet the Nabateans devised sophisticated water management systems, dams, cisterns, canals, and underground reservoirs that collected and stored every drop of water. This allowed the city to thrive not only as a trading hub, but as a sustainable urban environment in one of the harshest climates on Earth. It was this ability to harness water that gave Petra its life. Religion, too, played a central role in Nabatean culture. The city is filled with temples and sacred spaces, reflecting a pantheon of deities that blended Arabian traditions with Hellenistic and Mesopotamian influences. Chief among their gods was Dushara, often represented as a simple stone block, while the goddess Aluza, linked to the Greco-Roman Aphrodite, was also widely venerated. Rituals, processions, and sacrifices would have filled Petra's temples and open courtyards, binding the community together in both faith and identity. For centuries, Petra prospered. Its markets bustled with goods from across the known world. Silks from China, spices from India, incense from Arabia, and luxury goods from Rome. The Nabateans grew not only rich, but powerful, maintaining their independence even as empires rose and fell around them. In 106 CE, however, Rome annexed the Nabatean kingdom, incorporating Petra into the province of Arabia Petraea. At first, the city continued to flourish under Roman rule. Roads and new buildings were constructed, and Petra remained a key link in the empire's trade networks. But over time, Petra's fortunes began to decline. New trade routes shifted commerce away from the Arabian deserts and towards sea lanes, diminishing the city's importance. Earthquakes in the 4th and 6th century CE further damaged its buildings and infrastructure. Slowly, Petra's population dwindled, and by the early Islamic period, it was largely abandoned. The once great city was left to the elements, its facades weathered by wind and sand, its cisterns empty, its streets silent. For the Western world, Petra became a city of legend, whispered about in travelers' tales, but unseen for centuries. Local Bedouin tribes knew of its existence, but it remained hidden from outsiders until 1812, when Swiss explorer Johann Ludwig Burckhardt, disguised as an Arab pilgrim, was guided to the ruins. What he saw astonished him: towering facades, grand theaters, and vast tombs, all carved from cliffs of red and pink sandstone. The lost city of Petra had been rediscovered. Yet even today, Petra holds mysteries. The Nabateans left behind no extensive written records, and much of their history must be pieced together from archaeology and scattered references by Greek and Roman writers. How exactly did a nomadic people develop such advanced engineering and architecture? Why did they choose Petra's remote and harsh location? And perhaps most hauntingly, why did they disappear so completely? The fall of Petra serves as a reminder of the fragility of human achievement. The Nabateans built a city of stone, yet even stone could not preserve their power against shifting trade, natural disaster, and time itself. Their culture, absorbed into Rome and later eclipsed by new empires, faded into obscurity. What remains is their legacy in architecture and engineering, and the haunting beauty of Petra, a ghost city where silence reigns, but the artistry of its builders endures. Walking through Petra today, one feels both awe and melancholy. The treasury rises like a vision from myth, its columns glowing in the desert light. The monastery, carved high into the cliffs, stands as a solitary sentinel. And the Sikh, with its winding path between towering walls, still leads visitors into a city that feels both eternal and forgotten. The Nabateans may have vanished, but Petra remains, one of the most striking reminders of how even the most advanced civilizations can slip into the shadows of history.
In the glittering waters of the Aegean Sea, on the island of Crete, there once flourished a civilization unlike any other in the ancient world. The Minoans, named by modern archaeologists after the mythical King Minos, were seafarers, builders, and artists whose culture reached heights of sophistication long before classical Greece. They raised palaces of labyrinthian complexity, painted frescoes alive with color and movement, and commanded the seas with fleets that linked Crete to Egypt, the Levant, and beyond. Their society seemed vibrant, prosperous, and advanced.
And then, just as swiftly as they rose, the Minoans vanished, leaving behind ruins steeped in both beauty and mystery. The story of the Minoans begins around 3000 BCE, but their civilization reached its peak between 2000 and 1450 BCE. At the heart of their culture stood the great palaces, Knossos, Physos, Malia, and Zakros. These were not just royal residences, but vast administrative centers, filled with storerooms, workshops, courtyards, and ceremonial halls. The Palace of Knossos, sprawling and complex, inspired the legend of the labyrinth where the Minotaur dwelled. Its intricate corridors, grand staircases, and vivid murals gave rise to myths that outlived the civilization itself. Walking among the ruins today, one can sense the echoes of a society that valued artistry as much as power. The Minoans were masters of the sea. Their strategic position in the eastern Mediterranean made them a hub of trade and cultural exchange. Ships carried Cretan goods, pottery, textiles, and especially olive oil and wine to distant shores, while Egyptian ivory, Near Eastern metals, and exotic luxuries arrived in return. Frescoes show fleets of ships gliding across the waves, evidence of both naval power and maritime pride. Some scholars believe the Minoans may have even dominated the Aegean through a kind of thalassocracy, or sea empire, projecting influence without the need for armies on land. Whatever their political structure, their wealth and reach were undeniable. Their art reveals a society both refined and deeply spiritual. Frescoes depict natural scenes of dolphins leaping through blue seas, lilies blooming, and young men and women engaged in ritual activities like bull leaping. Unlike the art of many contemporary cultures, Minoan art often emphasizes vitality, movement, and harmony with nature rather than war or conquest. The bull, in particular, was a central symbol, connected to fertility, strength, and ritual sacrifice. The famous bull-leaping frescoes may represent athletic contests, religious rites, or mythic reenactments, but their exact meaning is still debated. Religion in Minoan Crete seems to have centered on goddesses, sacred symbols, and cave shrines, suggesting a society where the divine feminine was venerated. Yet, for all its achievements, the Minoan civilization began to falter in the mid-2nd millennium BCE. The most dramatic theory ties their decline to one of the greatest natural disasters of the ancient world, the eruption of Thera on the nearby island of Santorini, around 1600 BCE. This catastrophic volcanic explosion, among the most powerful in recorded history, devastated the island, burying the city of Akrotiri under ash and sending tsunamis racing across the Aegean. For Crete, the impact would have been severe. Harbors wrecked, fields ruined, trade disrupted. Some scholars believe the disaster dealt a mortal blow to Minoan society, leaving it weakened and vulnerable. But the fall of the Minoans cannot be explained by natural disaster alone. For even after the eruption, the palaces of Crete were rebuilt, and life continued. Around 1450 BCE, however, nearly all the major Minoan palaces were destroyed by fire, with the exception of Knossos. Archaeologists debate whether this was the result of internal conflict, rebellion, or invasion. Many point to the Mycenaeans, a rising power on mainland Greece, as the likely conquerors. By 1400 BCE, Knossos itself had fallen under Mycenaean control, and the Linear B script, which used to write early Greek, appears in the ruins, replacing the enigmatic Linear A script of the Minoans, which remains undeciphered to this day. The disappearance of the Minoans is as haunting as their rise was dazzling. Their palaces stood in silence, their frescoes faded, and their script unreadable. To later Greeks, their memory survived only in myth, the tale of King Minos, the labyrinth, and the half-man, half-bull Minotaur. These legends, woven into the fabric of Greek culture, may be echoes of real practices and events now obscured by time. Were the palaces truly labyrinths designed to awe and control? Did the bull-leaping rituals inspire myths of monstrous creatures? We may never know for certain. What we do know is that behind the myths lies a civilization of extraordinary vitality. The enigma of the Minoans deepens with each discovery. Excavations reveal advanced plumbing systems, multi-story buildings, and complex social structures. Their art suggests roles for women not often seen in other ancient cultures, with female figures appearing prominently in religious and social life. Their trade networks connected them to civilizations as distant as Egypt and Mesopotamia. And yet, for all this sophistication, their language and much of their culture remain close to us. The undeciphered linear A script is a silent witness, a locked door to their inner world that no one has yet opened. The Minoans remind us of the fragility of even the most advanced civilizations. A combination of natural disaster, foreign conquest, and the shifting tides of history can erase greatness in a single generation. What remains are ruins, silent stones, faded frescoes, and broken pottery that hint at the glory of a people who once ruled the seas. Their legacy, though, lingers. They influenced the Mycenaeans, who in turn influenced classical Greece, shaping the foundation of Western civilization. In this sense, the Minoans never truly vanished. They live on in the myths, art, and culture that followed. When we look at the ruins of Knossos, with its maze of rooms and its frescoes of bulls and dolphins, we are not only looking at the remains of a lost people, we are looking at the roots of myth, the fragments of a story that humanity has been telling for thousands of years. The Minoans stood at the dawn of history, and though they disappeared into the shadows of time, their memory continues to shine through the cracks of legend and stone.
We have walked through the ruins of vanished worlds. Cahokia's great mounds, Petra's carved stone, the pyramids of the Maya, the towers of Sardinia, the fortresses of the Andes. Civilizations that once commanded power, wealth, and knowledge, now reduced to silence. They did not fall for one reason alone. Some were undone by drought, others by war, famine, or conquest. Some were slowly absorbed until their names faded from memory. And some disappeared so completely that only ruins remain, whispering of mysteries we cannot yet solve. But none of them are truly lost. Their descendants still walk the earth. Their languages echo in living tongues. Their traditions persist in ways both small and profound. The past is never gone. It lingers in us, in our stories, in the very stones beneath our feet. These civilizations remind us of what humanity can achieve and how fragile those achievements can be. They are warnings as much as memories that no society, no matter how advanced, is immune to collapse. The monuments they left behind stand not only as relics of glory, but as silent questions for us. When our cities one day lie in ruins, what will remain? What will others remember of us? Until next time, when we journey again into the mysteries of the ancient world.